Welcome, everybody, to Mom Street USA. My name is Jackie, aka Wishes Mama, and on today's episode, we are going to be continuing our revisit of our one-day park strategies. And today, we're going to be talking about Magic Kingdom. So we figured we would kind of hop here to Disney after we did Universal Studios last episode with our good friends Duck and Jess. So this episode, we figured we'd hop into probably the biggest Disney park with the most attractions to consider. So today we're going to be chatting about what is a good course of action if I am only going to be spending one day at Magic Kingdom. What is kind of my plan of attack, and what should I do if I want to get as much done as I can in only one day? So like I said, this is a revisit of this. We did this several years ago here on Mom Street, but so much has changed in the parks and things are constantly changing anyway. So you'll hear us talk about that throughout the series, especially at Disney. There's a ton of construction at all of the Disney parks right now, it feels like. So a lot of new is coming. A lot of new has popped up since we last covered all of this. So we're going to do our best to give you the most accurate information for now. And you know what? If in a year or so we need to revisit these again, we will definitely do that for sure. So let's hop to Magic Kingdom. A couple just general notes about Magic Kingdom. Is that the area in the front of the park that is called Main Street USA opens before early entry. So what is early entry? Well, we did a whole episode on early entry and rope drop not that long ago, but early entry is the time that Disney resort guests get to have a little bit of extra time in the parks. So typically 30 minutes before official park open at Magic Kingdom is their early entry time. Magic Kingdom typically opens at 9. There are a few days that it opens at 8, or that it opens at 8 instead. So take a look at your My Disney Experience app or the Disney World website for those park hours. But typically Magic Kingdom opens at 9, so 8:30 would be that early entry time for resort guests. So you can get there fairly early and then get your castle and Main Street photos before your rope drop time happens. So again, 75 minutes before park open is when that's going to happen. Now, let's talk about transportation to Magic Kingdom, because Magic Kingdom is a little tricky to get to just because the parking lot is actually not directly on site outside of the gates. It was built that way intentionally. Walt wanted it to be a kind of more magical approach to the park. So he didn't want you just to walk up after you got out of your car. So you have to park at the Transportation and Ticket Center if you are driving or if you are doing any sort of ride share. So because of that, especially if you're on property and have access to Disney buses, those buses are the best transportation method to get to Magic Kingdom. Now, I know the buses can be a pain, but they truly are the best because they drop you the closest that you can get to the main gate when it comes to transportation. Now, the only other better option to that would be if you are staying on a monorail resort or one of the resorts that are close by to Magic Kingdom that has bus transportation. Those are great options as well because they all drop you very close to that entrance plaza for Magic Kingdom. Um, Again, if you are taking like an Uber or a Lyft or ride share, they will take you to the TTC unless it's a minivan that is operated under Lyft. Those will actually take you to the same drop-off location that the buses take you. And just another general note, if you're someone who maybe has been to Disney but not super recently, they actually in the last several months have adjusted their early entry process for resort guests. So it used to be that they would scan you in kind of on the right-hand side of the hub, and then they would hold you right between Cosmic Rays and the Tomorrowland Speedway as you were looking at the teacups, kind of in that space right there. Well, they have shifted the way that they do their early entry. So now they still scan you in at the same location. You still get scanned in. Your party for early entry will have to have a ticket or a magic band checked to make sure that you are a resort guest. But after that, they actually let you go and queue at whatever attraction it is that you're trying to ride first. So any of the attractions that are open during that early entry time, which would be Fantasyland and Tomorrowland minus Tron, you can actually go and stand in line to wait to get into the queues for those attractions. So they kind of shifted that a little bit away from the old system that we have known for years and years. I kind of like this better, but it really means that you have to get to the park super early, because they're going to start letting people scan in to go queue up at those rides pretty much right at park open. So it's not like something where you have to congregate and wait to be scanned in until early entry starts. Nope. They are pretty much going to let you go to that attraction and queue up there. And sometimes those attraction queues will even open 15, 20, 30 minutes before early entry starts to let people start to go through the queues. You'll especially find that at something like Seven Dwarfs Mine Train or Peter Pan at Magic Kingdom. So keep that in mind. You really want to make sure you know exactly where you're going, and you really want to make sure that you get there early. So I know it can be a major pain to get up super early on vacation, but especially at a park like Magic Kingdom, it is super, super important. So the way that we're going to set this up today is we're going to do kind of two different scenarios for your one day at Magic Kingdom. The first scenario that we are going to talk about is if you are going to the park and you are utilizing lightning lanes. So you have purchased multi-pass and single passes, and you are planning to use those lightning lanes for your day. The second plan of attack that we are going to talk about today for Magic Kingdom will be if you are not planning to use lightning lanes, what does that day look like? How does it differ? Things like that. Now, the thing about Magic Kingdom is there are probably 5 different really solid itinerary choices that you can make to make the most of your day. It really depends on who is in your travel party, what attractions are important to them, and whether or not this is something that you've already been to Magic Kingdom either on this trip or a previous trip or, recently within the last couple of years. So lots of variables when it comes to that, especially if you're traveling with kids. Are they young kids? Are they older kids? Are they thrill seekers? Are they not? So I'm going to go through kind of two different options, sort of, for your morning time. That's kind of going to be the biggest differences that you'll see in the varying of your itineraries. So I'm going to give you two different options that I think are both really solid options. Now, as I go through this list, I'm going to name the majority of the attractions at Magic Kingdom. You may find that on this list, there's 2 or 3 that you're like, "Nope, don't need to do that," or, "No, I don't like thrill rides, I don't wanna do that," or, "Nope, we did that on our last trip a couple years ago, we don't need to do it again." Those types of things. If that's you, great, perfect. I'm so glad that you know that and that you have that kind of predetermined in your head, so that way you can just skip that part of the itinerary that I give you and move on to the next part that interests you. So like I said, I'm going to list off the majority of the attractions at Magic Kingdom. So you can pick and choose kind of from this order that I give you, pull out the ones that you want and create your kind of personalized itinerary from that. Before we hop in, I do just want to mention that I am somebody who loves to do this. I love to give specific specialized itineraries for our friends that go and visit the parks. If I've got family that's going, friends, anyone from our Mom Street community, I am more than happy to help you. So if you're like, I've got this crazy big party that I'm traveling to Magic Kingdom with, what in the world should I do? Send me a message. I am more than happy to help you figure out the best way to kind of go about your day. Like I said, this is something that I truly like to do. I've done it for as long as I can remember, probably for the last 10 years for friends and family that are visiting the park. So if you need help after you have listened to this episode, please send me a message. Okay. All of that being said, that was kind of a mouthful. Let's talk about what we're going to do with our lightning lanes. Now, we're not going to talk super in-depthly about what lightning lanes are and how they work and all that kind of stuff, because just not that long ago, we did a whole recap on lightning lanes and I went in depth on how to book and where on your app to go and all of that good stuff. So if you need specific lightning lane help, refer back to that episode. But I am going to just go over some general ideas for lightning lanes at Magic Kingdom. So, just some notes. You will, if you are on property, which we just talked about not that long ago, meaning you're staying at a Disney resort or something like Shades of Green or Swan and Dolphin, then you can book your lightning lanes 7 days before your check-in date. So if your check-in date is on the 8th, you can book your lightning lanes starting on the 1st. So keep that in mind. If you are off property, you're not staying at a Disney resort, maybe you're staying at somewhere near Disney Springs or one of the other local area resorts, you will book 3 days ahead of time from your first park day. So it's a little bit different in the terminology and kind of the way that you decipher that. So keep that in mind. If you're off property, whatever day you have selected for your ticket to start is the date that you will be is your eligibility date, and you'll count 3 days before that. So on property is check-in day, off property is ticket start day. So just make sure you have that kind of in your brain to figure out when you become eligible. There are 2 tiers for rides at Magic Kingdom for Lightning Lane. Tier 1 is Jungle Cruise, Peter Pan, Space Mountain, and Tiana's Bayou Adventure. We are unsure as to what is going to happen with Big Thunder Mountain when it reopens in 2026. Previously, it was a tier 1. Don't know if they're planning to put that back on tier 1. I would assume they probably are. I don't know if that means that one of the other rides is going to go to tier 2. That remains to be seen. So we will have to kind of just wait and see what Disney does about that. We don't even know the date for Big Thunder yet at this point that I'm recording this. So we're just going to have to kind of wait and see with that. Your tier 2 rides, there's a whole slew of them, but Barnstormer, Dumbo, Haunted Mansion, Small World, Mad Tea Party, Magic Carpets of Aladdin, Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, PhilharMagic, Monsters Inc. Laugh Floor, Pirates of the Caribbean, Tomorrowland Speedway, Under the Sea, Journey of the Little Mermaid. So those are all your tier 2 attractions. Just a note that when Disney changed to the most recent iteration of Lightning Lanes, they took off all of the character meet and greets. So no characters on there for that. The 2 single pass options that you have are Tron and Seven Dwarves. So those are both really great options to save a little extra in your budget to utilize that as well. Now, my suggestion, because we're talking about if you are using lightning lanes for this first section, my suggestion is tier 1 to book either Jungle Cruise or Tiana's Bayou Adventure. And then for tier 2, so you get 1 in tier 1, 2 in tier 2. For tier 2, I would look at something like Haunted Mansion, Pirates, or Winnie the Pooh. Those are going to be kind of your 3 best options to choose from. You're going to want to book your first ride approximately 60 to 90 minutes after park open so that you can take advantage of the early morning lower crowds. So even if you're someone that doesn't have early entry, if you get there still at rope drop, you're going to have at least an hour's worth of lower crowds, if not closer to 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours on a slow day. So you don't want to necessarily start your lightning lane super early in the day because you're going to be able to get through more standby options that early in the morning. Just something else to note as you are pre-booking these lightning lanes is you really want to pay attention to the location in the park that your rides are and what time you have that are available. The best advice I have is to book your rides as early as possible, starting at that 60 to 90 minute window. So if the park opens at 9, your first lightning lane could be 10 o'clock. And ideally, now the app won't let you overlap your ride times as much as I wish it would, but you can overlap them about 15 minutes. So ideally, you've got a 10 o'clock, you've got a 10:45, then you've got, what would that be? An 11:30, for your first 3 multi-pass rides. And then you can fit in your single pass rides after that aspect for that. Another note, taking times to do things like parades, the stage show, cavalcades, those can be inserted anywhere in this plan that we're going to talk about. However, keep in mind that that will eat up a large portion of your day if you plan to do a lot of those, and it will minimize the amount of rides that you can accomplish. Now, if those shows and experiences are high on your priority list, then please, by all means, do them. I'm not going to necessarily talk about things like Country Bears, Tiki Room, the stage show, the Adventure Friends cavalcade, like, we're not gonna necessarily include those in our list for this itinerary because we're just focusing primarily on the attractions. But do keep in mind that you can fit any of those in depending on where you're at and what time it is. The Festival of Fantasy parade, which is typically either a 2 or 3 p.m. parade, and the Adventure Friends cavalcade, which right now I believe is like an 11-ish a.m. cavalcade currently. Now, check your app. They have the most up-to-date times. Both of those will start by Tiana's Bayou Adventure and end by the train station and fire station down Main Street. Now, if you want to see the new Starlight Nighttime Parade at Magic Kingdom, it goes the opposite way. It starts by the fire station and the train station, goes towards the castle, and then around the corner and ends at Tiana's Bayou Adventure. So keep that in mind based on where you're located in the park and what time the experience is starting to kind of plan whether or not that's something that's going to fit into your itinerary for the day. The stage show, which is Mickey's Magical Friendship Fair, is at the castle. It is a really good way to see characters if you don't want to spend a ton of time in lines to see those characters. You will see the Fab Five. No, Fab Six, sorry, are in there. Tangled characters, Princess and the Frog characters, and Frozen characters, all in that stage show. So if you want to kind of see them all and you don't necessarily need the direct character interaction with them, that stage show may be a really good way to see them. All of those characters are in the Festival of Fantasy Parade, and most of those are in the new Starlight Parade as well. You can see Elsa, you can see Tiana and Naveen, you can see Rapunzel and Flynn. That parade's fairly new. I'm trying to rack through it in my brain, and most of the Fab Six characters are in there. So you'll still be able to see most of those in the Starlight Parade as well. So that is a really good use of your time if you are someone that wants to see characters, doesn't necessarily need the one-to-one interaction with them, and you're trying to save some time. So you really just have to think about what your priority is when it comes to characters and those parades and shows, to kind of decide whether or not you want to include those in your itinerary. And again, check your app in the morning, like when you're on your way to the park, to see what the most up-to-date show times are, because those are pretty standard. However, there are certain aspects that may cause those to be adjusted, changed throughout the day. So just little things to keep in mind with that. All of that being said and done, let's jump into what our itinerary is going to look like. So with Magic Kingdom, you're going to want to be there at least 45 minutes before you can enter the park. A couple different courses of action. If you are early entry, I highly suggest you rope drop Fantasyland. If you are doing just regular rope drop entry, you are going to want to head over to Frontierland and Adventureland. So again, with early entry, only Fantasyland and Tomorrowland are open minus Tron. So you have all of Fantasyland and you have Space Mountain and you have Buzz Lightyear when it reopens after the refurb will be another one. The other side of the park, Adventureland, Frontierland, Liberty Square, that all doesn't even open until park open. So it's not part of early entry. So you don't even need to worry about that if you're planning to do early entry. So in Fantasyland, your first standby rides are going to be either Peter Pan or Seven Dwarfs. I would do Peter Pan if you've booked a single pass for Seven Dwarfs. Now, if Seven Dwarfs is really high on your list and you want to try to ride it twice, you've booked a single pass, then go ahead and do it standby first thing in the morning, to kind of get that first ride in, and then your second ride will be with your single pass lightning lane that you've booked. After that, check the wait time for Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. This ride gets a super long wait because it is closest in proximity to Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. So any family that's got kiddos that are not tall enough for Seven Dwarfs or don't want to ride Seven Dwarfs, they go directly across the way to Winnie the Pooh. So check that one. If it's got a lower wait time, go ahead and get in line. If that line is not all the way through the garden, thumbs up, you're good to go. when it comes to Winnie the Pooh, and you can see that kind of from the front gate, which is helpful. If you are like by the little beehive interactive area, go ahead and wait. You're looking at maybe 20, 25 at the very most. But likely less than that because you don't have lightning lanes slowing down those lines this early in the morning. After that, you can kind of make your rounds. You can hit Under the Sea with Little Mermaid and you can hit Small World, and that will kind of round out the majority of your Fantasyland attractions. Now, you just really have to plan initially for Peter Pan and Seven Dwarfs. If you do Peter Pan first, I would then still do the same thing where you're going to head from Peter Pan. Don't do Small World yet. Head back over towards Winnie the Pooh to check Winnie the Pooh. If it's too long, or you can see on your app that it's too long, swing around. Then you can do Little Mermaid and then over to Small World. But either way, the majority of your early entry time for our Disney resort guests is best spent in Fantasyland because you can knock out a lot of those rides very quickly during that early entry time. Now, if you are someone that is not doing early entry and you are going just at park open, your best bet is going to be heading over to the Adventureland side of the park because the early entry guests have not been over there because it's not open during early entry. So if you are going Adventureland side, your options for rope drop are going to be Jungle Cruise. If that's high on your list and you didn't book a lightning lane for it, you're definitely going to want to rope drop that. Big Thunder Mountain, when it reopens in 2026, is a great option for rope drop over there, as well as Tiana's Bayou Adventure. So those would be my top 3 that I would kind of choose between priority-wise. Again, some of these you may book on your with your lightning lanes. Like I said earlier, I really suggest Jungle Cruise as one because that ride is really popular regardless of what time of year. It's really popular with the holiday overlay right now as I'm recording this, but it's really popular no matter what, and it is a hard lightning lane to get later in the day. We don't know what Big Thunder Mountain's going to look like with the new refurb and how popular it may or may not be. It's a very high capacity ride, so it typically doesn't get a super long line in the morning, but that remains to be seen. When it reopens, I imagine there will be kind of a big surge of people that want to go there first just to revisit Big Thunder Mountain since it's been so long since we've all been able to ride it. And the same thing with Tiana's Bayou Adventure. It doesn't necessarily get a super long line in the morning. You do have to be careful because it doesn't always like to open first thing in the morning. So be sure you have a place that you're going to pivot to if Tiana's Bayou Adventure does not open. Make sure you know what your secondary choice is when it comes to that. So those would be my suggestions. And then after those, for other standby options, you can do Haunted Mansion and Pirates of the Caribbean. Both of those over on that side of the park should be fairly low waits for you to be able to kind of get all of that done during your first hour-ish of the park being open, depending on waits. Now, if you happen to be there on a morning where waits don't look too terrible, once you've gotten through Fantasyland, if you're an early entry person, then head over to Adventureland and follow through the rest of that plan that I just gave. Because chances are you may still be able to hit 3 or 4 of those rides before your first lightning lane time even starts. That means that you're going to get those bonus rides on your lightning lanes, or you're going to have less stress trying to get some of those times on your lightning lanes later in the day. So it just really depends on how busy the park is. Pull up your My Disney Experience app. Make sure you've got those wait times loaded and you're keeping an eye on them. In the mornings, like first thing, oftentimes those wait times on My Disney Experience will be a little bit inflated. So if you see something like a 30 and you're like, maybe, go ahead and get in line and see how it's moving. If it's moving continuously and you don't feel like you're just like at a standstill, chances are it's probably less than a 30 for the majority of these attractions. It really just depends. It's hard to predict sometimes, but that's kind of my suggestion with that overall. Um, Before I hop over to what you're going to want to do next after that, let's talk about Tron. So I do highly, highly suggest that you book Tron for a single pass lightning lane, especially if you're planning to use lightning lanes. It is a fabulous use of your budget for that. I do not suggest doing that at rope drop. One, because it doesn't open for early entry like the rest of that line does. However, you will have resort guests that go and stand in line for the line to open at park open. So that is a really tricky one to rope drop. So I really, unfortunately, don't suggest you do it. If you want to do it twice and you've booked a single pass for it already, but you want to be able to do it standby, my biggest suggestion is to go like lunchtime around 12:30. If you see that wait drop to around 35 minutes, go ahead and get in line. My rule of thumb for that one is if the line is not outside of the main archway that's like up all the way on the platform, if it's inside those switchbacks that are not outside of that kind of archway, you're probably good to go ahead and wait. In that standby line, you're looking at 35-ish minutes from there when it comes to Tron, typically. Now, things can happen, they can have loading issues, cars can have, you never know, right? But generally speaking, that's kind of my rule of thumb when it comes to Tron. The other time you can check is in the evening. Now that we've got the new Starlight Parade, it pulls a good crowd away from the rides at the evening because you've got the parade directly into the fireworks. If you're someone that is either planning to stay for the second parade, because there are two nighttime parades right now. If you're someone that's planning to stay for the second parade, maybe the first parade and the fireworks would be a good time to go to hit Tron. And then that way you'll be done with it by the time the second parade is getting ready to start. So those are my suggestions for standby. Again, I'll reiterate this later when we talk about not using lightning lanes. But I would definitely book a single pass for that and then use those tips to get you a second ride if you really want to do that twice, one time through standby. So all of that being said, after you've kind of whisked your way through one of those two plans, either Fantasyland or Adventureland, then you're going to want to start just utilizing your lightning lanes. So you're going to use your first lightning lane. As soon as everybody taps in for that first lightning lane, you're going to be able to book a secondary lightning lane. You can always hold 3 at any given time when it comes to Multipass. So if you're using Multipass and you've got a 7 Dwarves and a Tron booked, you're going to see 5 lightning lanes on your plan for the day, which is a great way to set up your day if you are someone that is only planning on one day at Magic Kingdom. That is the best course of action when it comes to that. But if you didn't get some of those, then that list becomes the order that you attempt to book next. So things like Winnie the Pooh, things like Big Thunder Mountain whenever it reopens, things like Haunted Mansion, Tiana's Bayou Adventure, those rides, if for some reason you weren't able to get those done during that first 60 to 90 minutes of the park being open, that becomes your priority list for booking your lightning lanes. As far as lightning lanes go, you just want to book them as early as possible, as close together as possible. And if they don't give you a time that you want, let's say you use your first lightning lane, you try to book a Winnie the Pooh, it gives you a 6 p.m. Don't give up. Keep modifying, keep refreshing that app as you're waiting in line, and something new should pop up to give you a better time. You've just got to be patient and really diligent about it, so that way you'll be able to utilize that. Now, that will take up the majority of your morning, right? Everything that you're doing during that early entry time, everything that you're doing right after, and your first several lightning lanes will take you all the way up to lunchtime. If you are planning a quick lunch, which I do suggest if you've only got one day at Magic Kingdom, there are tons of different places that you can mobile order from. Mobile ordering will save you a ton of time when it comes to those lunch spots. I do suggest trying to do lunch a little bit earlier. 11:30 is great. When you get closer to noon, those places get a lot busier. It gets a lot more hectic and crazy in there. But Casey's Corner, Columbia Harbor House, Friars Nook, Pinocchio Village House, all of those are really great options for mobile ordering. So do that kind of after you have run through your first set of standby lines and gotten through your first maybe 2 to 3 lightning lanes. Close to 11:30 would be my suggestion for that. So after lunch, you're really going to be looking at the wait times and kind of living on your app for what has a low wait or what times are available for your next lightning lanes. So I'm going to kind of run down the next kind of general list of attractions. Some of these you may be able to do just standby if they've got a 15 or 20-minute wait. Some of these you may go, ooh, that's got a time for a lightning lane coming up in 20 minutes from now. That's perfect timing for us to get over there. Let's go ahead and book that. It really just depends on the crowd for the day and what lightning lanes you've already been able to get through at this point in your day. You kind of have to hop around between the app and the lightning lane. So like the tip board part of the app and the map part of the app that will show you the wait times. The other thing that you can do is kind of think about these in clusters. So something like the first two on this list are Barnstormer and Dumbo. Barnstormer might need a lightning lane in the afternoon because a lot of little kids, once you get through all of the bigger rides, a lot of little kids still want to do Barnstormer. So it can get like a 40-minute wait. Dumbo, because it's got a higher capacity with the double sides, typically has closer to like a 25-minute wait. So maybe you book Barnstormer on Lightning Lane. Maybe it's 20 minutes from now, and maybe you go and ride Dumbo in the meantime. So you can kind of cluster some of these together to make it make sense with like geographically where you're going in the park. So again, things like Barnstormer, Dumbo, and even Mad Tea Party can be thrown in that kind of little group. And then Magic Carpets of Aladdin is kind of off on its own little island over back towards Jungle Cruise. You maybe are able to hit that while you're over on that side of the park to kind of get that Adventureland side done when it comes to between lightning lanes for Jungle Cruise and Pirates and doing standby for Magic Carpets. Depends on your timing and things like that. PhilharMagic, Monsters Inc. Laugh Floor, and the Tomorrowland Speedway. Again, you just really have to kind of think about some of those you will absolutely not need to book with a lightning lane. Something like PhilharMagic very rarely gets more than a 15-20-minute wait because it is such a high capacity theater. So you really just have to look at where am I at in the park, trying to avoid going cross all the way from side to side, and kind of thinking about it that way. After that, those kind of that I listed, you've got just a handful left. The railroad right now, because of construction and for the foreseeable future, probably several years, the railroad is not running the full loop around Magic Kingdom. It is just a shuttle train, the Main Street station and the Fantasyland station, which is like near Storybook Circus, right by Barnstormer that we were just talking about. So you may want to do that. The other two attractions that you have left would be Astro Orbiter and Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin when that reopens after its refurb. Those two are a little trickier, and you may have to just keep an eye on them throughout the day and just try to find a time where they've got a lower wait. Buzz will be available on Lightning Lane. Astro Orbiter does not have a Lightning Lane option, so it's a really tricky one to kind of time right. But you hopefully will be able to find where it's maybe a 20 or 25, and that's not terrible for that. After that, you can think about things like the Carousel, People Mover, and then that's where those shows come in. Country Bears, Hall of Presidents, Carousel of Progress, Enchanted Tiki Room. All of those are great filler options if you're like waiting on a lightning lane time to become eligible and you're nearby. Those are great filler rides if you've got the availability in your schedule. The other thing to think about is those character meet and greets. Again, we talked earlier about the fact that there are no lightning lanes, unfortunately, for the character meet and greets. So you're really just going to have to gauge whether or not that's something you're interested in. You know, there are some that are stationary, like the princesses that meet in Fantasyland are always located there. You've got some that are more roaming characters. You've got, various different options when it comes to that. So just take a look and see what really interests your group. Maybe pick one or two and figure out where it makes sense geographically for them to be fit into your itinerary, with the understanding that chances are good it's going to be a 30-minute wait for a lot of those characters. So after you've kind of filled your afternoon with some of those rides that I just kind of threw at you rapid fire there. You're going to want a mobile order dinner. Again, the same list that we talked about earlier as far as locations and where to go. And then the evening is really just your cleanup time. We talked about this at Universal Studios with Duck and Jess last episode as well. that evening is really just your cleanup time. Chances are maybe you're just like, nope, we've done everything we wanted to do for the day. We're just going to relax. We're going to have a nice, relaxing dinner. We're going to watch the parade and the fireworks and just enjoy our evening in the parks. That is an amazing way to spend the end of your day after you've been running around like crazy in Magic Kingdom all day. Or maybe you took a longer lunch, and so now you're going to want to try and hit something like Tron, or you're going to want to go back and try to hit something like Seven Dwarfs again, or Tiana's Bayou Adventure, or Big Thunder Mountain whenever it reopens. Those evening hours are also a good time to get some of those more e-ticket attraction, those big thrill rides. If you can get an additional ride on those, that's the best time to do it. I think that kind of gives you most of the attractions, kind of something to think about when it comes to planning your day with lightning lanes. Again, I didn't give you a specific plan because it's really just determined by the day that you go and what the availability looks like for those lightning lanes. Are you willing to sit and refresh? Because if you know me, you know I'm really good at getting lightning lanes. Well, that's because I have the patience to sit and refresh my app and be ready to jump on a time whenever it pops up. So it really just depends on how much you want to be on your phone, how much you want to do that refreshing of those lightning lanes, and what the availability just looks like. It varies so much day to day. There's no way to predict what times are going to pop up for you whenever you go to book your additional lightning lanes. But just remember, you can book every ride once on Multipass, the ones that are eligible for Multipass, and you can always hold 3 Multipass lightning lanes at one time. So if any point in time you hop on your app and you're like, oh, I've only got 1 or 2 booked, hop onto that tip board to see what else is available. Go ahead and book it. You can always try and modify it later. So those are my biggest suggestions when it comes to lightning lanes at any park, but specifically Magic Kingdom, because that's what we're talking about right now. Now, let's talk about a game plan if we are not using lightning lanes and what that will look like. Now, with Magic Kingdom, if you are someone that wants to get in as many rides as humanly possible at Magic Kingdom, chances are you're not going to have a ton of time to do shows, characters, parades, fireworks. So you really have to decide your priority list. This is extra hard now that we've got that new Starlight Parade in the evening times. That kind of makes the evening a little bit harder. Previously, when it was just Happily Ever After, if you had seen it or you weren't a firework person or you didn't care to see it from the front of the castle, it was much easier to maneuver around and not have to worry about that. Now that Starlight is a thing, a lot more people are not riding rides in the evening time, which is great if that is something that you are wanting to do as well. So just keep that in mind as we go through. You're not going to hear me talk about a lot of shows, parades, fireworks in this specific itinerary because there is so much to do at Magic Kingdom. Now, the morning, if you're not using lightning lanes, the morning is going to seem fairly similar to what we just talked about. You are going to, if you are an early entry resort guest, you're going to head to Fantasyland. If you are a regular guest off property, you're going to head to the Frontierland Adventureland side. Again, Fantasyland, you're looking at Peter Pan or Seven Dwarfs as your first ride that you're going to queue up for. After that, you're going to look at things like the opposite of that, right? If you did Seven Dwarfs, check the Peter Pan line or vice versa. Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, being your next ride in that specific area. For the Adventureland Frontierland side, Jungle Cruise would be my first option. Big Thunder Mountain is a good one once it reopens, Tiana's Bayou Adventure, and then Haunted Mansion and Pirates. So those lists for your morning pretty much don't change. Whether you're using lightning lanes or not, it's really, that is just the best course of action, no matter who you are visiting the parks in the morning, in my personal opinion. Again, once you have hit one, like if you're a Fantasyland rope dropper because you've got early entry, but you want to hit some of those Adventureland rides, do your top 2 in Fantasyland and then head over to Adventureland to catch the rope drop over there. But I would say 2 rides in Fantasyland, maybe 3 if it's a really slow morning, and then hop over to the Adventureland side to rope drop over there as well. The thing that is really hard when you're not using lightning lanes are those 2 single pass rides. And you'll hear me talk about those single pass rides at every other park too. during lightning lane itineraries and no lightning lane itineraries. Those single pass attractions are the biggest time consumption that you're going to have at these parks when you're visiting. So Tron is a really, really tough one to get on just because it doesn't open with early entry, even though it's in Tomorrowland. All those things we talked about earlier. I highly, highly suggest that if you're able to budget even just a tiny amount for Magic Kingdom, a little bit of extra, do the single pass for Tron. You don't necessarily need to for Seven Dwarfs because you can rope drop that as long as you get there early. You'll be on and off there fairly quickly if you're able to get up and get going in the morning. Tron is so hard to get on without spending 30 to 60 minutes or more in line. So I highly suggest if you're able to find those few extra dollars per person to do your Tron single pass. Otherwise, again, you can try to rope drop it, but chances are there's going to be a long line there and you're going to spend an hour at least probably in the morning to devote to Tron, which means then you're going to be skipping out on Seven Dwarfs, Peter Pan, Jungle Cruise, so you really just have to decide. Now, if Tron is your absolute top priority, then go ahead and rope drop it. But you just have to understand that it's a give and take situation when you're not using those lightning lanes at Magic Kingdom. So again, lunchtime or parade time, evening time, you just really have to keep an eye on what those wait times are doing. And again, go and look at the physical line. I know it's annoying to walk all the way up there, but if that standby line is underneath and not outside of the main entry at the very top of that platform, you're looking around 35 minutes. So that can be a really good gauge. If that line starts to come out and down the walkway, come back another time. It's not worth it at that moment. Come back another time to try again. Your morning is going to be spent Fantasyland, Adventureland, or vice versa, trying to get as many of those rides done as possible. So let's say you are an early entry guest. If it were me, I would do Seven Dwarfs, Winnie the Pooh. Then I don't need to do Peter Pan. I don't need to do Jungle Cruise. Personal opinion. So I would do Seven Dwarfs, Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. I would do Mermaid and Small World, and that would knock out most of Fantasyland for us. Then I'd head over to Haunted Mansion, Tiana's, and Pirates. And that would be most of my morning before lunchtime. Again, mobile ordering for lunch can save you a ton of time and a headache of having to wait in line and figure all that out. So the same places that we talked about earlier for lunch, places like Casey's Corner, Cosmic Rays, Columbia Harbor House, Friar's Nook, and Pinocchio Village House are all decent options. Again, theme park food, you know how it is. I really like the new menu over at Pecos Bill as well, which I don't think I mentioned that earlier. It wasn't initially on my list when I started this. Now, your afternoon is going to be almost identical to what you did or what we just talked about with lightning lanes, only you're not going to be looking lightning lanes. So you really are going to have to live on that app. You're going to have to see what those wait times look like and how can I cluster rides close together so I'm not having to go all the way across the park to get to those short wait times. So clustering together Mad Tea Party, Dumbo, and Barnstormer. Most of those three attractions, again, I said earlier, Barnstormer sometimes gets a long line. It just really depends on the day. Doing things like PhilharMagic, Monsters Inc. Laugh Floor may or may not be on your list. They're more shows and not rides, so it just depends on your personal preference. Magic Carpets of Aladdin is a good one to kind of throw in when you're over on that side of the park. Again, same with Tomorrowland Speedway when you're near kind of Mad Tea Party, that could go up with that group as well. So really just kind of geographically making your secondary list based on what you know you're going to want to do after you run through that morning list. So ultimately, the afternoon is going to be almost identical other than you're going to be using lightning lanes for some, whereas you're going to be doing all standby, obviously, if you're not doing lightning lanes. But those rides that you're really doing in the afternoon are pretty identical across the board. Again, things like the train character meet and greets, those shows like Country Bears, Tiki Room, you may not have time for those when it comes to not using lightning lanes because your time is going to be more spent waiting in those queue lines for the attractions that you want to do. So you really got to make that priority list of this afternoon. You really have to know, okay, these are our top 3 rides we really want to try to get in this afternoon. So you can make those a priority and then go from there. You'll probably be able to get in 4 to 5 rides before dinner time. Again, mobile ordering is a huge, huge benefit when it comes to Magic Kingdom, especially because those quick service restaurants can be very overwhelming. Again, trying to eat when it's not prime meal time. So maybe your dinner is closer to 4 or closer to 7, and not kind of in that 5, 6 o'clock rush hour with your lunch closer to 11, closer to 1, depending on what you're able to do, or if you want to grab a snack along the way, tons of options when it comes to that as well. And then in the evenings, again, any other rides that you missed or second rides of attractions that wait times have come down now that it's winding down to the evening. Take a look at what time the Starlight Parade and Happily Ever After are running. Right now, it's been typically that Starlight is 8 and 10 and Happily Ever After is at 9, but it changes based on the time of year, based on when the sun's going down, right? Because all of those have to happen after it has started to get dark at Magic Kingdom. So take those things into consideration whenever you're looking at your list of your evening rides. Because if you're not planning to do any of those, either of the parades or the fireworks, you're going to have a lot more time to work with in the evening. If you're planning to do the fireworks or the parade, highly suggest the second parade because it will be far less busy, a lot easier to kind of walk up within the last, 10, 15 minutes before the parade starts to find a decent spot. That first parade is always really, really packed because families with the youngest kids in the park are wanting to do the parade and get out, or do the parade, the fireworks, and get out, right? Because it becomes very, very late for those littles. So keep that in mind. Go back to the rides that you were rope dropping to see whether or not those are going to be rides that you want a secondary chance at getting in line for. Because even things like Seven Dwarfs during Happily Ever After, that wait time does tend to drop. And the other thing that you have to consider is that during that time, a lot of lightning lanes are not being utilized. So the standby line does go by quicker. That's not something we've necessarily talked about yet, but that is something to consider with your earlier and later standby times. You don't have as many lightning lanes overlapping that are going to slow down your standby line. So just something else to consider when it comes to your evening time at Magic Kingdom is whether or not the rides that you want to get on are going to be a ride that has a high capacity, has a high amount of lightning lanes that may still be coming through. All those types of things are things to consider. But generally speaking, that is kind of my suggestion, a little fast and furious to get you through Magic Kingdom. Hopefully that is helpful to you. Again, if you are someone that's like, okay, yep, I hear you, that all makes sense, but I've got a group of 10 and we're going to Magic Kingdom for a day, and we've got kids that are 5, 6, 12, and 14. What do I do? Send me a message. I am happy to help you guys with that. I want you guys to have a successful trip. I want you guys to feel like you can accomplish everything you want to accomplish on your Magic Kingdom or any other park day, right? This is part of our one-day park strategy series that we are in the middle of right now on Mom Street, hitting all 3 of the Universal parks and all 4 Disney parks. So stay tuned for the other parks coming up. We are going to be headed to Animal Kingdom next, and then we are going to hop back to Universal to do Islands of Adventure after that. So we've got some more parks coming your way with this series. Again, as always, if you've got suggestions or comments or questions, things that you need help with when it comes to planning your trip, please reach out to us. We are momstreetusa@gmail.com. You can find us at momstreetusa on several different social media platforms. And if you haven't checked out our new, still somewhat new Patreon account, we do post a lot of content over there. And we will be posting over there some graphics with these one-day itineraries kind of laid out for you guys to be able to pick and choose from once we kind of wrap this series. So that is coming your way and it will be posted on our Patreon account. So if you are someone that needs that visual, head over there here in the next coming weeks and we will have, I'll try to get those first couple done here and maybe we'll post them in 2 groups for you guys to have access to over on the Patreon account. So that is coming very soon with this. But for this episode, thank you all so much for joining me for Mom Street USA, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Bye, everyone.